My fiancé's deployment was him ghosting me to marry someone else. The phone call came while I was packing another care package. Jolene's voice was ragged, almost unrecognizable through the crying. Why would you do this to him, today of all days? I stopped taping the box. Do what? You're not here. He keeps checking his phone. This is his wedding day, and you're... The roll of tape hit the floor. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me. I know you two had problems, but this is cruel. My hands went numb. Jolene, Reese is deployed. He's been overseas for 4 months. Silence. Then a choked sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Overseas? He's at the Meadowbrook estate. The ceremony started at 2. That's not possible. I'm sending you a photo right now. The screenshot loaded in pieces. White columns, string lights, a cake table with gold trim, and Reese in his dress blues, arm around a woman in a strapless gown, both of them mid-laugh like they were the only 2 people in the world. The caption read, Reese and Ashlyn, together at last. I tried to breathe and couldn't, tried to think and hit static. The care package sat half-sealed on my kitchen counter, filled with his favorite trail mix and the wool socks he always complained about needing. I was in my car before I made the decision to drive. Meadowbrook Estate was 2 hours south, just outside the base town. I didn't remember the drive, didn't remember getting on the highway or passing the exit signs. My brain had narrowed to a single thought on repeat. This isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. The venue parking lot was half empty when I pulled in. Guests were filtering out in clusters, holding sparklers and laughing. I saw the photographer packing up lighting equipment near the entrance. A few bridesmaids stood smoking by a fountain, dresses shimmering under the early evening glow. Then I saw him. Reese stood near the main doors in full uniform, medals catching the light, his arm wrapped around a woman I'd never seen before. She had dark hair pinned in soft waves, a lace veil trailing down her back. They were posing for a final round of photos, turning toward each other, foreheads touching. She said something and he laughed. That same low rumble I used to hear on late-night calls when he'd tell me about his day. I got out of the car. My legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. One of the bridesmaids noticed me first. She nudged her friend, and their conversation stopped. A groomsman glanced over, then another. Reese turned. For a split second, nothing moved. Not the guests, not the photographer, not the woman in the wedding dress standing inches from him, smiling like the world made sense. Then every bit of color drained from his face. I walked toward him slow and steady. The woman, Ashlyn, Jolene had called her, looked between us, smile fading into confusion. I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the panic tightening his jaw, close enough to watch his mouth open and close without sound. So, I said, voice calm and clear, what deployment are you on? He didn't answer, couldn't. Ashlyn's hand dropped from his arm. What is she talking about? I pulled my phone from my pocket and held up the last text he'd sent me, 2 weeks ago. 3 little words and a heart emoji. I'm his fiancé, I said. Ashlyn stared at the screen, then at Reese, then at my left hand, where I still wore his grandmother's ring on a chain around my neck. Her face crumpled. Reese! Her voice cracked. Who is this? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at me like I was holding a live grenade. Tell her, I said. Ashlyn's voice cut through the murmur of the guests like glass breaking on tile. Who are you? I looked past Reese and spoke directly to her. I'm the woman he's been engaged to for 18 months. Someone gasped. One of the bridesmaids put a hand over her mouth. Reese finally found his voice. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I let the words hang there. That's what you're going with? Ashlyn's hands were trembling. The bouquet hung loose at her side, white roses starting to droop. She looked at him like she was waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to laugh and explain that this was some bizarre prank, or a crazy ex-girlfriend crashing the wedding for attention. He didn't laugh. I pulled the chain from under my collar and held up the ring. The diamond caught the light. Small and simple. The one he'd saved 3 months of paychecks to buy. The one he'd proposed with on a beach in October while the sun set behind us, and he told me I was the only thing that made sense in his life. He gave me this 2 Octobers ago, I said. Told me his grandmother wore it for 40 years. Ashlyn's face went pale. I unlocked my phone and turned it toward her, scrolling slowly through the thread. Pictures of us at a barbecue last summer, screenshots of him complaining about a staff sergeant who hated him, a video from New Year's where he was drunk and laughing, singing off-key into a beer bottle, and then the recent ones. Messages about care packages, about how hard it was being apart, about counting down the days until he came home. The last text was from 11 days ago. Miss you so much, love you. Ashlyn stared at the screen. Her breathing had gone shallow and quick. He told me you were an ex, she whispered. He said you kept texting him and he didn't know how to make you stop. I live with him. I pulled up the lease agreement, our names side by side under the address of a 2-bedroom apartment 40 minutes from base. We signed this in March, renewed it in September. One of the groomsmen muttered something under his breath. Another took a step back, shaking his head. Reese's jaw worked like he was chewing on words that wouldn't come out right. Look, I can explain. Explain what? Ashlyn's voice cracked. Explain why you're still living with someone? Why you told me she was harassing you? I was going to tell you. When? She was shaking now, veil slipping sideways. After the honeymoon? After we filed taxes together? I opened my photos and held up another image. A receipt from the post office dated 6 weeks ago, showing a care package sent to his unit address. Another from 4 weeks ago. Another from 2 weeks ago. All of them addressed to Lance Corporal Reese Callahan, with tracking numbers and delivery confirmations. I've been sending him letters and packages since he told me he was deploying, I said. He gave me the unit address himself, said mail call was the only thing keeping him sane. Ashlyn looked at him. Her expression wasn't angry yet. It was worse. It was empty. You're not deployed. It wasn't a question. Reese's hands came up, palms out like he was calming a spooked animal. Ashlyn, please just let me. Are you deployed right now? Yes or no? The silence stretched so long I heard someone's phone camera shutter click. No. Ashlyn's face twisted. She ripped the ribbon off her bouquet and threw it at his chest. It bounced off his medals and landed in the gravel. We were supposed to leave for Cancun tomorrow. I know. I told my parents you were overseas. I told everyone you were serving. I defended you when they said we were moving too fast. Her voice climbed higher with every word. I bought a wedding dress in 6 weeks because you said you didn't know when you'd get leave again. Reese reached for her and she jerked back so hard her heel caught on the hem of her gown. One of the bridesmaids rushed forward to steady her, glaring at Reese like he'd just lit the venue on fire. Ashlyn shoved the bouquet into the bridesmaid's hands and turned back to him, chest heaving. The honeymoon's canceled. The marriage is canceled. I don't care what paperwork we signed. She looked at me, eyes red and streaming, makeup starting to run. How long? 18 months engaged, I said quietly. 3 years together. She made a sound like all the air had left her lungs. Then she pulled back her hand and slapped him. The crack echoed across the parking lot. A few guests flinched. Someone's grandmother said, "Oh my lord," in a scandalized whisper. Reese stood there, cheek blooming red, staring at the ground. Ashlyn turned and walked toward the main building, bridesmaids scrambling after her. One of them stopped long enough to shoot Reese a look that could have stripped paint, then hurried to catch up. The photographer was standing frozen near his equipment, camera still dangling from the strap around his neck. The groomsmen started peeling away one by one, murmuring to each other, casting glances back at Reese like they weren't sure whether to stay or bail. I looked at him. He still hadn't moved. His hand was pressed to his cheek and his eyes were somewhere far away, like he was trying to rewind the last 10 minutes and figure out where the floor dropped out. "You told her I was deployed," I said. He didn't answer. "You told me you were deployed." His throat bobbed. He finally looked at me and I saw it then. He wasn't sorry. He was terrified. Not because of what he'd done, because he got caught. I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't run. I didn't speed up. I just kept moving toward my car, keys already in my hand. Behind me, gravel crunched under dress shoes. "Wait." I unlocked the door. "Please, just wait." I opened it and slid into the driver's seat. The door was halfway closed when his hand caught the frame. "Don't do this." I looked up at him. His face was flushed, eyes wet, that red handprint still vivid across his cheek. "Let go of the door." "I need to explain." "You had 4 months to explain. You chose a wedding instead." "I didn't plan this." His voice cracked. "I swear I didn't plan any of this." "Then what was it, improvisation?" He flinched like I'd struck him. His hand dropped from the door, but he didn't step back. Just stood there blocking my exit, shoulders hunched like he was bracing for another hit. "I met her at a bar off base," he said. "It was one night. One stupid night where I wasn't thinking, and then she kept calling, and I didn't know how to what? Say no? Tell the truth? I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed. It came out sharp and bitter, nothing like a laugh at all. "You married someone else." "I know. You told me you were deployed. You let me send care packages to an address where someone had to sign for them and wonder why some random woman was mailing you cookies and magazines." His jaw tightened. He looked away, toward the venue, where guests were still filtering out in awkward clusters, pretending not to stare. "I was going to tell you," he said quietly. "When?" "I don't know. After. I thought maybe after the wedding I could figure out how to keep lying." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Reese?" He dragged a hand through his hair, messing up whatever gel he'd used to slick it back. His dress uniform was still immaculate, metals gleaming in the late afternoon sun, and the absurdity of it made my chest tight. "I panicked," he said. "She started talking about meeting my family, and I didn't know how to back out without looking like an asshole, and then her parents got involved, and everything just kept moving faster than I could stop it. So you got engaged to her." "She proposed. At a restaurant. In front of everyone. I couldn't say no." "You could've. You just didn't want to look bad." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep things separate and then figure it out later. But then she wanted to set a date, and her dad's some retired colonel who knows half the officers on base, and you couldn't disappoint her father." "That's not, but you could disappoint me." His face crumpled. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes like he could physically push the tears back in. "I'm sorry. You already said that." "I mean it. I don't care." I reached for the door handle. He stepped closer, one hand on the roof of the car, leaning down so his face was level with mine. "Please don't leave like this." "How should I leave?" "Just give me a chance to make this right." "There's no making this right." "I can fix this. I can call Ashlyn. I can explain to her that—" "Explain what? That you're a coward who used the military as an excuse to juggle 2 relationships?" "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." "You weren't trying not to." He stared at me, his mouth opened but nothing came out. I pulled the door shut. He stumbled back just in time to avoid getting clipped. I started the engine and reversed out of the spot without looking at him, tires spitting gravel as I turned toward the exit. In the rearview mirror, he was still standing there, one hand raised like he thought I might stop. I didn't. The drive back was a blur of highway and bile rising in my throat every time I replayed his voice saying, "I panicked." Like panic was an excuse. Like fear justified burning 2 lives to the ground because he couldn't stand the idea of looking selfish in front of a colonel's daughter. I pulled into the apartment complex just after 6. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I sat in the car for 5 minutes, staring at the building, at the second-floor window where I could see the edge of our couch through the blinds. Our couch, our lease, our life. Except it had never been ours, not really. I grabbed my purse and went inside. The apartment smelled like the vanilla candle I'd lit that morning, back when I still thought my biggest problem was getting through another lonely month of waiting. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood in the kitchen, looking around at the evidence of a shared existence. His protein powder next to the blender, my coffee mug in the sink, a grocery list on the fridge in his handwriting, half the items already crossed off. I walked to the bedroom and opened the closet. His uniforms hung in a neat row, pressed and perfect, boots lined up underneath, a duffel bag shoved in the corner, the one he'd claimed was packed and ready for deployment, still sitting there with the tags on. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The care package receipts were easy to find. I'd saved every confirmation, every tracking update, organized them in a folder labeled Reese Deployment. I scrolled through them, screenshots loading one after another, dates and addresses and delivery confirmations forming a timeline of my own stupidity. I forwarded the entire folder to myself, then opened a new message. The base's contact directory was public. I found the number for his unit's administrative office, then kept digging until I found the name of his commanding officer. Captain Hale. I drafted the email slowly, carefully, keeping my tone flat and factual. I attached the receipts, the screenshots of his texts, a photo of the lease agreement. I included the date and location of the wedding, the name of the venue, and a brief explanation of how he'd used a fake deployment story to cover an affair and a second engagement. I didn't add anything emotional, no accusations, no anger, just the facts, clean and undeniable. I read it over 3 times, checking for typos, making sure every attachment was labeled clearly. Then I hovered my thumb over the send button. My hands were steady, my breathing was calm. I hit send. The whoosh sound felt louder than it should have. I set the phone down on the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Somewhere across town, Reese was probably still at the venue, or in his car, or sitting in a parking lot trying to figure out how to undo what what couldn't be undone. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt tired. The reply came faster than I expected. I woke up the next morning to 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize and an email notification that made my stomach drop. Captain Hale had forwarded my message to someone in the legal office. The new email was short, professional, and requested that I call back at my earliest convenience to provide a formal statement. I sat up in bed, phone still in my hand, and stared at the screen until the words stopped looking like words. Then I called. The woman who answered introduced herself as Lieutenant Vargas. Her voice was clipped, efficient, the kind of tone that didn't waste time on pleasantries. "We've reviewed the materials you sent," she said. "I need to confirm a few details for the record." I answered every question she asked. Dates, locations, screenshots, receipts. She asked if I'd received any communication from Reese indicating he was on active deployment, and I read her the texts verbatim, the ones where he'd said, "Can't call for a while," and "OPSEC is tight," and "Miss you so much," counting the days. She didn't react, just typed, the sound of keys clicking faintly through the line. "And you sent care packages to his unit address during this time?" "Yes." "Do you have confirmation that they were received?" "Tracking says they were delivered and signed for." "By who?" "I don't know, it just says base personnel." More typing. "Mrs. Spy," she paused. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name." I gave it. "Ms. Brennan, I want to be clear about what happens next. This will trigger an internal review. Depending on the findings, it could result in disciplinary action, up to and including a formal reprimand on his record. Are you comfortable proceeding with that?" I didn't hesitate. "Understood. We'll be in touch if we need additional information." She hung up before I could say anything else. I set the phone down and sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the closet door, at the row of uniforms still hanging inside. By noon, my phone started blowing up. The first text came from a mutual friend, someone Reese and I had met at a barbecue last summer. "Hey, heard you're going through something. You okay?" I didn't reply. The second came 20 minutes later from someone I barely knew, a guy Reese played basketball with on weekends. "Not sure what happened, but maybe you should talk to Reese before this gets out of hand." I deleted it. The third was from his cousin, a woman I'd met exactly twice. "Family's worried about you. This seems really extreme. Can we talk?" I blocked her. They kept coming, some concerned, some cautious, a few outright accusing me of overreacting, of making a private issue public, of trying to ruin his career over a breakup. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened a group text with the 3 people who'd sent the most persistent messages and attached the same email I'd sent to Captain Hale. Screenshots, receipts, timeline, everything. I added one line. "This is what happened. If you want to defend him after reading this, that's your choice." Then I muted the conversation. By the end of the week, the fallout had spread beyond his immediate circle. Someone posted about it on a private military spouses forum. I only found out because a woman I didn't know sent me a message on social media, saying she'd seen the story and wanted me to know I wasn't crazy for reporting him. "My ex did something similar," she wrote. "Lied about a deployment to cover an affair. No one believed me until I showed proof. You did the right thing." I thanked her and closed the app. Reese tried calling once. I let it go to voicemail. His message was 3 minutes long, his voice hoarse and unsteady, cycling through apologies and justifications and pleas for me to stop this before it ruins everything. I deleted it halfway through. Ashlyn texted me on Thursday. "I don't know if you want to hear from me, but I wanted to say thank you." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "For what?" I exhaled slowly, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I'm sorry you had to find out that way. I'm not. Better now than a year from now with a kid and a mortgage." She sent another message a moment later. "He told me you were obsessed with him, that you couldn't accept the breakup and kept showing up places trying to win him back." My jaw tightened. "That's not true." "I know. I saw the lease. I saw the photos. I saw the texts where he was telling you he loved you 2 weeks before our wedding." A pause then. "I'm sorry I believed him. You didn't have a reason not to." "Still, I'm sorry." I set the phone down and pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to push back the pressure building behind them. When I looked again, she'd sent one more message. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here. We survived the same liar. That counts for something." I saved her number. The formal notification came the following Monday. It wasn't addressed to me. It was a forward from Lieutenant Vargas. A brief courtesy update letting me know that the review had been completed and that Reese had received a written reprimand for conduct unbecoming and misuse of military status in personal matters. The language was clinical, bureaucratic, but the meaning was clear. He'd been found at fault. It wouldn't end his career, wouldn't result in discharge or demotion, but it would sit on his record, a permanent stain visible to anyone reviewing his file for promotions or transfers. I read the email twice, then closed it and went back to packing. The apartment lease was in both our names, but I'd already contacted the landlord and arranged to break it early. Reese could keep it or leave. I didn't care. I just needed out. I'd spent the weekend boxing up my things, separating what was mine from what was his, leaving anything ambiguous in a pile by the door. His friends could deal with it. I was taping up the last box when my phone buzzed. Another mutual friend, someone I'd actually liked, someone I thought might understand. "Hey, I know things are messy right now, but do you really think reporting him was necessary? It feels like you're punishing him for being scared." I stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting. Then I typed back. "He lied about being deployed. He got engaged to someone else while we were living together. He let me send care packages to his base while he was planning a wedding 2 hours away. That's not fear. That's cruelty." I hit send and blocked the number before they could reply. The next morning, I loaded the last of my boxes into my car and stood in the empty apartment one final time. The walls looked smaller without our things filling them. The carpet had dents where the couch used to sit, where the coffee table had pressed into the fibers for 2 years. I closed the door and left the keys on the kitchen counter. Outside, the air was cool and sharp, the kind of early autumn morning that makes everything feel temporary. I got in the car and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Reese could have the apartment, the explanations, the fallout. I was done carrying any of it. I moved back in with my parents for the first 2 weeks. It wasn't ideal, but it was quiet, and I needed quiet. My mother didn't ask many questions. She made coffee in the mornings and left a plate of food on the counter at night, and when I came downstairs at odd hours unable to sleep, she didn't comment on it. My father was less subtle. He'd look at me over the newspaper with the kind of concern that made my chest tighten, but he never said anything either. They just let me exist in their house without needing me to explain or justify or perform recovery. I spent most of those days applying to jobs 2 states over, places far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone who knew Reese, who'd heard the story story secondhand and formed opinions I didn't want to navigate. On the third day, Jolene called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked on the second word. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, and said nothing. None of us knew, she continued. He told us he'd broken up with you months ago. He said it was mutual, that you were both moving on. When he said he was getting married, we thought, she stopped, inhaling shakily. We thought it was fast, but we didn't think he was lying. He's good at it. I know. I needed you to know that if we'd had any idea, we would have said something. My mom's devastated. She loved you. I didn't know what to say to that. She wants to call you, Jolene added, but she's scared you'll think she's making excuses for him. I don't blame her. You should. We all should have seen it. You can't see something someone's actively hiding. Jolene was quiet for a moment, and I heard her blow her nose on the other end of the line. He's not talking to any of us, she said finally. Won't return calls, won't come to Sunday dinners. Mom drove to his apartment last week, and he wouldn't open the door. That's not my problem. I know. I wanted you to know that he's not getting away with this. Not with us. Not with anyone. I thanked her, and hung up before the conversation could go anywhere else. 2 days later, his mother sent me a letter. It arrived in a pale blue envelope with my name written in careful cursive across the front. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity won. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten, apologizing for not seeing what was happening, for not questioning the timeline, for believing her son when he said I was in the past. She didn't make excuses. She didn't ask me to forgive him. She just said she was sorry, and that she hoped I found peace, and that I deserved so much better than what he'd put me through. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. By the end of the second week, the story had spread further than I'd anticipated. Someone in Reese's unit posted about it on a private forum, and from there, it leaked into the wider military community online. I only found out because Ashlyn sent me a screenshot of a thread where people were debating whether reporting him had been justified or vindictive. Most of the comments sided with me. A few didn't. Someone else replied with a single line. He dragged the military into it when he lied about being deployed. I closed the app and didn't look at it again. Ashlyn and I had been messaging sporadically since the wedding. Short exchanges, nothing heavy, just the occasional check-in to see how the other was holding up. She told me she'd moved out of the apartment she and Reese had planned to share, that she was staying with her sister while she figured out what came next. I told her I'd done the same, that starting over felt both terrifying and necessary. It's weird, she wrote one night. I keep expecting to be angrier, but mostly I just feel tired. Same. Do you think he actually regrets it? I thought about that for a long time before answering. I think he regrets getting caught. Yeah, that sounds right. She sent a laughing emoji, but it felt hollow. The promotion suspension became official at the end of September. I only knew because Jolene mentioned it in a follow-up text, saying Reese had been passed over for staff sergeant and that the reprimand had been cited as a contributing factor. She didn't editorialize, just stated the fact and left it there. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel anything, really. It was just information. One more consequence in a growing list of things that weren't my responsibility to carry anymore. Reese tried reaching out again in early October. This time it wasn't a call or a voicemail. It was an email, long and rambling, full of apologies and justifications and promises that he'd changed, that he understood what he'd done, that he wanted a chance to explain in person. I read the first paragraph and deleted it. Then I blocked his email address. A week later, one of his friends showed up at my parents' house. I was in the driveway, loading a box into my car, when a truck pulled up and a guy I vaguely recognized got out. Hey, he said, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual. Got a minute? I set the box down and crossed my arms. Reese wanted me to give you something. He held out an envelope. I didn't take it. He's really messed up about all this. The guy continued. I think he just wants to talk, you know? Clear the air. There's nothing to clear. Come on, you guys were together for 2 years. That has to count for something. It did. And then he lied to me for 4 months and married someone else. The guy shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. Look, I'm not saying he didn't screw up, but maybe reporting him was a little extreme. I mean, it's on his record now. That's permanent. I stepped closer, keeping my voice level. He told me he was deployed. He let me send care packages to his base while he was planning a wedding. He told his fiancé I was a stalker. That's not a screw-up. That's a choice. And I'm not responsible for the consequences of his choices. The guy didn't have an answer for that. He set the envelope on the hood of my car and walked back to his truck without another word. I waited until he drove away, then picked up the envelope and tossed it in the trash bin by the garage. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom with my laptop open, scrolling through apartment listings in a city I'd never lived in, a place where no one knew my name or Reese's or any of the history we'd built and burned. I bookmarked 3 that looked promising and sent inquiry emails to all of them. For the first time in months, I didn't check my phone before bed. I didn't wonder if Reese would try to contact me. Didn't rehearse what I'd say if he did. I just turned off the light and closed my eyes. And I slept. The official notification arrived in mid-October, forwarded to me by Jolene even though I told her I didn't need updates. She sent it anyway with a single line of text. Thought you'd want to see this. It was a scanned memo from Reese's chain of command, stamped with the official Marine Corps seal, and dated 3 days prior. The language was formal, bureaucratic, stripped of anything resembling emotion. Staff Sergeant Reese Callahan has been formally reprimanded for misrepresentation of duty status to civilian parties. This reprimand will remain part of his permanent military record, and has been considered in recent promotion evaluations. I read it twice, then set my phone down on the kitchen counter. My mother looked up from where she was chopping vegetables. Everything okay? Yeah, just something I needed to see. She didn't press, just went back to the cutting board, and I stood there for a moment longer, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, vindication, relief. But it was just information. A line in a file. A fact that existed whether I acknowledged it or not. I picked up my phone and texted Jolene back. Thanks. She replied immediately. He's losing it. Won't talk to anyone. Mom's worried he's going to do something stupid. I didn't respond. Whatever Reese was going through now wasn't something I could fix, and it wasn't something I wanted to carry. The story spread faster than I'd anticipated. By the end of that week, someone on base had leaked the details to a military spouse forum, and from there it jumped to Reddit, then Twitter, then a handful of TikTok videos dissecting the timeline and calling it unhinged behavior. I only knew because Ashlyn sent me a link with 3 skull emojis and the caption, "We're famous." The video was titled, "Marine Gets Caught with Two Fiancés at His Own Wedding," and it had over 400,000 views. I watched it with the sound off, my stomach tightening as the creator walked through the entire sequence. How Reese had lied about deployment, how I'd shown up at the wedding, how Ashlyn had slapped him in front of everyone and left. The comment section was brutal. This man said semper fi and meant semper lie. Imagine being this confident and this stupid. I hope both women are living their best lives now. I closed the app and tossed my phone onto the couch. Ashlyn called an hour later. "Did you see it?" she asked, voice somewhere between horrified and amused. "Yeah, my maid of honor posted it. I didn't know she was going to, but honestly, I'm not mad. You should have hit him harder. There's always next time." Let's hope there's not a next time. We talked for another 20 minutes, swapping updates and screenshots. The conversation easy in a way I hadn't expected. She told me she'd started seeing a therapist, that her mom had taken her on a weekend trip to the coast to get away from everything. I told her I'd signed a lease on an apartment 3 states away, that I was moving at the end of the month. "Good," she said firmly. "You deserve a clean start. So do you." "Yeah, I'm working on it." Before we hung up, she said, "You know, I think we're going to be okay." I believed her. Reese tried reaching out again 2 days later. This time it was through a number I didn't recognize. A voicemail left at 2 in the morning, his voice slurred and unsteady. "I know you hate me," he started, the words running together. "I know I need you to know I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't plan it. Things got out of control and I didn't know how to stop it." There was a long pause, the sound of him breathing into the phone. "I'm seeing someone," he continued. "A therapist. She says I have issues with avoidance and conflict, and I'm working on it, okay? I'm trying to fix this." Another pause. "I just need you to know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I'll always be here." The voicemail ended. I deleted it and blocked the number. The following week, another one of Reese's friends showed up at my parents' house. This time it was someone I actually knew. A guy named Curtis who'd been at a few dinners and barbecues back when Reese and I were still pretending everything was fine. He caught me as I was carrying a box out to the moving truck, his expression somewhere between apologetic and determined. "I know you don't want to talk to him," Curtis said, hands raised like he was approaching a spooked animal. "But he's in a really bad place right now. He's not eating, not sleeping. I'm worried about him." I set the box down in the truck bed and turned to face him. "That's not my problem. I get that. I do. But he's my friend and I'm asking you. Just talk to him. 5 minutes. That's all." "No. Come on." "He had a choice," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Every single day for 4 months, he had a choice. He chose to lie. He chose to let me send care packages while he planned a wedding. He chose to tell Ashlyn I was a stalker. Those were his decisions. And now he gets to live with the consequences." Curtis opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly searching for a counter-argument. "You want to help him?" I continued. "Tell him to stop sending people to do his apologizing for him. Tell him to take responsibility and move on. Because I have." I picked up another box and walked past him into the house. He didn't follow. By the time I moved into the new apartment, the online attention had mostly faded. The TikTok video was still up, still racking up views, but the comments had slowed, and the outrage had shifted to newer scandals and fresher drama. Ashlyn and I kept in touch, trading messages every few days, our conversations gradually shifting from Reese to other things, work, hobbies, plans for the future. She told me she'd started dating again, someone she'd met through a friend, and that it felt strange but good to be with someone who didn't make her second-guess every word. I told her I'd enrolled in a certification program, something I'd been putting off for years, and that it felt like the first decision I'd made in months that was entirely mine. "Proud of you," she wrote. "Seriously, you too." In early November, Jolene sent me one last update. "Reese got orders. He's transferring to a base in California in January. I don't think he's coming back." I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. It wasn't closure, it wasn't justice. It was just distance. The kind of distance that made the whole thing feel smaller and less immediate, like something that had happened to someone else in another lifetime. I didn't think about him much after that. There were moments, of course, times when a song came on the radio, or I passed a restaurant we used to go to and felt a brief, dull ache, but it wasn't longing. It was just memory, the same way you remember a scar without missing the wound. Ashlyn posted a photo in December, smiling on a beach somewhere warm, her new boyfriend's arm around her shoulders. The caption read, "New year, new everything." I liked it and commented with a heart emoji. She replied an hour later, "How's the new place?" "Good, quiet, exactly what I needed." "Good, you deserve quiet." I set my phone down and looked around the apartment. Bare walls, secondhand furniture, a single plant on the windowsill that I was determined not to kill. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that was enough. The last time I heard Reese's name was in late December, when a mutual acquaintance mentioned in passing that he'd been seen at a bar near his new base, drinking alone, looking like he'd aged 5 years and 6 months. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Whatever he was going through, whatever rebuilding or unraveling or reckoning he was in the middle of, it wasn't my story anymore. It was his. And I was done carrying it. On New Year's Eve, Ashlyn sent me a text at midnight. "Happy New Year. Here's to better men and better decisions." I raised my glass of cheap champagne to the empty apartment and typed back, "Amen to that." I graduated in May with honors, walked across the stage in front of my parents and a handful of friends I'd made in the program, and felt nothing but relief. Ashlyn sent flowers to my apartment with a card that read, "Told you so. Proud of you." She'd gotten remarried in March, a small ceremony on the coast with people who actually knew her. She posted one photo, her and her husband laughing in the surf, barefoot and sunburned, and I commented with a string of heart emojis. We still texted every few weeks, trading updates and memes, the kind of friendship that existed entirely outside the wreckage that had brought us together. Reese's name came up occasionally in suggested friend lists or tagged in old photos, but I scrolled past it the same way I scrolled past ads for things I didn't need anymore. I didn't wonder where he was or who he was with or whether he'd learned anything. It didn't matter. The apartment had stopped feeling temporary somewhere around February. I'd painted the walls, bought real furniture, hung photos that had nothing to do with anyone but me. I stood in the kitchen one night in early June, making dinner for myself, music playing from my phone on the counter, and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd thought about him. Not with anger, not with hurt, just not at all. And that felt like the only ending worth keeping.